I got this bell jar a few months ago on sale, and it's been taking up space on my potential project shelf for months. So today I'm going to show you how I design fantasy creatures, and we're going to make a specimen, a skeleton, something to go on display. Oh, by the way, welcome to Conjured Craft. My name is Taryn. Let's get started. Whenever I'm designing a creature, the first question is, what is the intention behind it? If you're filling a brief for a client, then you might already have some guardrails to guide you. If you're expanding a fantasy setting with more flora and fauna, then there's probably rules to the world that you can follow. Maybe you had a weird dream about birds and you just felt like making a prop, so you're using it as an excuse to turn it into a monster design video. On an unrelated note, I recently had a dream about weird birds, specifically this chunky owl-looking thing with the head of a person. And when I told a friend about this dream, they said that it sounded ghoulish, which made me think if I combined the word ghoul and owl, I'd get something like Ghowl. Now, I did a bit Googling, and this word does exist in a game series called Phantasy Star. Also, if you drop the H, it becomes a bit of slang in Northern Ireland. Basically means like an idiot. And I think that's fine. I think we're still going to use the word Ghowl and just move on ahead with this creature. When you're making things for fun, you probably don't already have a brief from a studio telling you what the character or monster is. That means that you have to write a story. To my mind, there has to be a reason for why a creature exists. Besides the natural order of things, or evolution, or even some higher power making things as they are, if we don't know why this monster is here, where they came from, what they do, what makes them unique to everything else in the world, then it's always going to feel dull or even lifeless because we haven't given it one. The Ghowl, to my mind, are cherubim or cherubs, both the evangelical depiction of innocence lost and the Mesopotamian portrayals of anthropomorphic creatures. Basically, I'm combining the sort of more angelic cherubs that you're used to seeing with the fearful monstrosities of the ancient world, only mine will be weird, scary birds. I want the Ghowl to have a folklore or fairy tale kind of feeling about them. However, they are real animals that exist in my homebrew world, Sedalia. To most people, they are a bad luck omen, so messengers of Lonos, the god of death. To the children of Sedalia, however, they are way more terrifying. Old wives' tales have basically shared through the generations that the Ghowl are actually the spirits of children who misbehaved and got lost in the woods, and that's the reason why they've got the humanoid-looking heads. So if a child ever sees one, especially near a forest, they need to turn around and run home as quick as they can. Now, we can and absolutely should develop this story further, but for the purposes of this video, I want to move on to our references. If you're making something that is of the natural world, then your references should also come from nature. Even in fantasy settings, designers will use real-world animals as their references for creatures. One of my favorite examples of this of all time is what the designers used to make the Balrog from Lord of the Rings. As you can tell, I am a fan. While it takes on a form of shadow and flame in the film, the designer, Ben Wooten, started from real-world animals and forms to piece together a more physical creature. Now, some elements are pretty obvious, like these massive curved ram's horns. Others are more loosely interpreted, like the nose. It actually resembles more of a pig or a dog. And if you didn't know, and you come around the side, it's got these little pointy ears, which to me look exactly like a baby hippo's. There's some other details I'm glossing over, but I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments. And while you're there, be sure to let me know what your favorite creature design is. Now, for the Ghowl, I'm most inspired by barn owls, largely because they already have these round head shapes due to their plumage, so this is going to help hide the shape of a more human skull. Also, owls are associated with witches and witchcraft, so this will add to the folklore element of the creature. From there, I'm also taking inspiration from the African jacana, which carries its babies around under its wings and as a result looks like an eldritch horror of limbs. But before we get ahead of ourselves anymore, let's talk about shapes. Hey, me in the future, if you could just zoom in a little bit on this part, that would be great. Perfect. Now, a more traditional starting point for design is to actually begin with the silhouette. Drawing shapes isn't exactly my favorite part of this process, but it will save you some headaches down the road if you understand the fundamentals to shape language. At its core, the basics are as follows. Round shapes are soft. Soft means approachable and friendly. Squares, blocks, or cubes are rigid and strong, which means pretty inflexible. And triangles or pointy shapes are sharp, dynamic, and dangerous. Now, by all means, these are guidelines to follow, but they are not hard and fast rules. One of my favorite examples where shape language completely falls apart is bears. Bears, by all accounts, are natural predators. They become aggressive even when they're not hungry. They are also still round and soft and very friend-shaped. So we run into a similar issue with birds. Now, on the whole, barn owls are very round and soft looking. When you look at them in portrait, their silhouette doesn't stand out very much. One thing that we could do to help is have their wings outstretched, which would add lots of points. This is why a hawk or a horned owl seems more dangerous at a glance. But if I take the barn owl design, which I really like, and show its profile, I can show some points for the tails and the claws without having to extend the wings. Then I start to change the shape further by giving it that humanoid head, some longer and, quite frankly, uncomfortable legs, and now it's beginning to look more and more like a dangerous creature. Finally, when I open up its mouth and show off its full set of nasty teeth. Oh, did I not mention that yet? That it has a beak and teeth? Don't worry, we'll cover more of that in the next part. The magic step for me that makes the difference between a good design and a great one is considering the anatomy of your character. Looking at your silhouette and your references, how does your creature move? Does it creep along the ground? Can it climb over surfaces? Or do things just start to fall apart as soon as you try putting bones and tendons inside of it? When looking at the physical world, gravity affects how big something can grow. Our rules of physics ultimately prevent anything approaching a kaiju-level monstrosity. So this means you just need to think about the bone density of your character. As another example, if it lives underwater, you could give it gills like a fish to breathe. But gills have been done to death. So maybe it's more like the nudibranch, which breathes through its skin. These are things we should consider as artists and monster makers. Even if it's completely glossed over by 99% of viewers who see your work, there will be people who appreciate the time and effort you've put into the design. It's me, I'm people. As I've already shared my references, you can probably gather pretty quickly how I'm going to piece this bird together. A trick that I'm doing to get a strong shape for the head is using images of both the human and owl skulls. By lowering the opacity on one so I can place them over each other, we start getting an idea about shapes. I'm taking the legs from the jacana because these longer toes and claws give that danger shape language we talked about earlier, and also they add to the story element that this bird could snatch up unsuspecting children. As with anything and everything on the internet, please take my advice on this topic with a healthy and iodized grain of salt. If you're more interested in the sculpting process on the skull, there's a bonus video on Patreon for my Coven members. You can also find my taxonomy cards there to download for free. Thank you for watching this video, and check out the next one linked at the end if you want to see how I sculpt horrible things. Until next time, I love ya, and I'll see you soon.